Good morning, Torbay. Good morning, Torbay Business Forum. And well, the sun's not shining this morning. It's a rainy day, so we get to stay in today. Oh, hasn't that been for the last 21 days? So it says 21 days to break a habit. Well, I think I've broken most of mine, and now I've got 21 days, unfortunately, to make some more. So just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, the conferencing, the webinars, everything that's going on. Let's talk about Torbay Business Forum before we meet our panel. We are here to bring businesses together. We have been in unprecedented times, as everybody knows, and we all know that networking is a contact sport. Well, how best to keep in contact with each other than through our wonderful media of the webinar. And thanks so much to Emily at South Devon College, who is our wizard. She's the wizard with all the buttons in the background, and she's going to make sure that this runs so smoothly, and hopefully I won't drop out this time. I'm Steve Reynolds, Chair of Torbay Business Forum. We're a group of volunteers that run the forum and have done for a number of years now. And you can see on the slide the type of activities that we get up to. So moving on to the next slide, Em. This is going to go so well. There we are, you can see. There we are. Today, we thought that after the last event where we had such good feedback, it'd be a shame not to do it again. So here we are. We have now launched. This is the inaugural Torbay Business Forum's Breakfast Bytes. In a moment, I'm going to be introducing to our stars of the show, Jim Parker, Alison Benney, Tim Godfrey, Chris Linton, and Simon Sherbersky. So before I go to the rest of the panel, last week, we did cut him off in his prime. We did suffer. The end game of our webinar last week was to be the grandfather of Torbay, Jim Parker. And we all know and love Jim, and we have now been seeing, many of us have been seeing his new Torbay Weekly. So this is the guy that has written about business for so many years, and now he is running business. Jim, what's it like trying to launch a newspaper in the current environment?
I think challenging is an understatement. So we actually announced the launch of the paper at the Abbey Sands Hotel in Torquay about 5 weeks ago. We didn't know then, obviously 2 weeks later, that was going to be closed down as everybody went into lockdown. So yeah, so we've launched with people working from home remotely, linking with people in Norwich, and we've managed to get out 3 papers so far with help from Fred the Rocking Horse in my playroom at home. So it's not been easy, but we've done it so far. And it's just a case of trying to keep it going now.
Yeah. And what's been the reaction so far?
We've had a brilliant reaction, Steve. From an industry point of view, we're seen as trailblazing because obviously at the moment the industry is in decline when it comes to print. So if you put in the context as well, we've launched a new print product now. So a lot of people looking at our model and trying to replicate that up and down the country. So yeah, we've done really well. We launched with a special one-off edition 3 weeks ago with the council, with the challenge of getting that into 65,000 homes in the Bay, every home. And we've now reverted back to our normal model of 20,000 copies in selected postcodes. But the reaction we've had from the public has been really good because the theme is naturally inspiring, and I think people want a bit of that, especially at this moment in time where we're looking and celebrating everything that inspires people in Torbay.
It's fantastic. You mentioned the naturally inspiring part, and you are the one that I believe that coined that phrase, along with now is the time. Now is a different time. How are we hearing about keeping Torbay together at the moment?
So we had Torbay Together is going really well. We had a meeting in quotes last week of all the partners, and it was really good. It was more of a reassurance thing really, and support people at this particular time. And it was good to hear where we are from a health point of view, from a business point of view, tourism. But really, it was just a hand around shoulders last week to say we're here as a partnership and as a group. And I think that went really well. We've got another one today at 10 o'clock after this webinar. And again, just for an update and to listen to people and try and help their problems. The two MPs, Kevin Foster and Andy Magnum, were there, and several issues were raised. So hopefully it's a reassurance and a problem-solving group as well.
And how can people get involved in Torbay together?
I think that the partners head up organisations and groups, and I think it's really key that the people in those groups make their feelings, their information requests to those people, so they can come and bring those to the table. The partnership is one of bringing the public and private sector together with the community, just as a united voice to make sure Torbay's heard in the right places. So we lobby people, lobby ministers, try and get a better Torbay. And there's 2 big grant funding bids on the go at the moment for Paynton and Torquay town centres, which we're supporting. So I think it's really key that people communicate from the down up to that partnership meeting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I do think that the work you're doing, I know I was on one of your Zoom meetings last week, and it is good to see all of the key people of the key organisations coming together for Torbay to help grow. Now, coming back to the newspaper, we're in a digital world now where people are a little bit worried about a bit touch sensitive, shall we say. Was it right to launch a paper weekly at a time like not time like this, but in a digital world?
Again, the industry is in decline when it comes to print. So we came up with what we hope is a unique way of doing that. We're guaranteeing the delivery of paper through certain letterboxes in a certain area. And that is attractive to the commercial world as well as to residents. So we're actually, not everybody's got access to a website and social media platforms. And in particular, at this moment in time, when we have lots of vulnerable, isolated people in Torbay, probably the only way to get to them is through the letterbox with a product, a print, a leaflet, whatever you want, to say we're here. This is how we can help you. These are the helplines. Please ring them. So that's why we did that with the council in the first place, and that's why I think it's very key going forward that we are a free paper. We're a quality newspaper. Hopefully, we have pagination issues at the moment because of a lack of revenue, like anybody else. So those paginations will grow hopefully when we get out of this situation. So I think hopefully again people are looking at what we're doing. It's gone okay so far. There's a long way to go to get the delivery right and all that goes with it. But I think that, yeah, 25–30% of Torbay probably have the only access to the information that they need as part of this horrible crisis has come through the paper.
Yeah, yes, well, that's good to hear. And if anybody hasn't seen a paper copy, is there a way to see it online?
Yeah, there's a digital version. If you go onto our website and follow the links, you then register for a newsletter, and then you can click right onto our version. It's called a page suite. They're available from there.
Excellent. Okay, well, really appreciate the work that you have been doing to help, because communication is key, and we're all getting used to the world of webinars, and making a new life out of this. Really, it'll be interesting to see if we can coax people out back to meeting together as opposed to sitting there. Was thinking about having a PJ party for Rowcroft or something, but maybe next week we might think about fancy dress, but who knows. At the moment there's some really serious business issues out there. And coming to the people, we've got Alison Benney from enlightenHR supporting us today, along with Chris Linton from Wollens, Tim Godfrey from Bishop Fleming. Alison, there are a lot of very worried employers out there. How do they decide who to furlough and who not to furlough?
It really is about business need, and it is the employer's decision who they furlough, not the employees. So I'm getting lots of questions like somebody's come to me and said they want to be furloughed. It is a business decision. You still have to act fairly. So if you're keeping some of your employees working and some of them not, then you must be careful not to make decisions on a discriminatory basis, protected criteria, which are usually sex discrimination, disability, and so on. So, but it is about assessing your business needs. So what do we need? What skills, knowledge and ability do we need in our business? And particularly relevant to that is that most businesses that are furloughing people, actually they've got less people trying to do all the work that is there. So you really need highly skilled highly flexible people that you can keep, but it is a business decision, not the employee's decision.
And how has it affected your business?
About 1 million phone calls every day, an email inbox which is stacked, and trying to get my head around lots and lots of new legislation in a very short space of time. Normally we have a very long lead time into stuff, and employment legislation usually changes April and October. It's usually finalised at the very latest by, say, February, March time, so you've got a few weeks. So it has literally been coming down the wires, and a lot of it is around the barristers' opinions. So they're all commenting on stuff, and to some extent you're getting some conflicting views about what's right or what's wrong, where the guidance isn't specific. So an example of that is around annual leave. At the moment, lots of questions around, can I make people take annual leave? What about somebody who's already got annual leave booked and I've put them on furlough, and so on and so forth. The government have been completely silent on that, although ACAS has said, yes, it's fine to put people on holiday while they're on furlough. I've advised clients, with a bit of a caveat that we have no clear direction, that it's probably sensible to say, take the first half year of the holiday. So at least when people are coming back, they're not coming back with a whole year's holiday to take. And there are specific actions you have to do, giving the correct notice in writing and so on and so forth, to be able to do that.
So if I've got 4 staff on furlough and I've got 2 in the office and I need to bring 1 back, can I do that?
Yes, you can. Once again, your furlough, when you furlough people, you should have got them to sign an agreement to be furloughed and an agreement to stop working. And in the latest HMRC guidance, they are saying you will not be able to get your rebate unless you have in writing those 2 pieces in your agreements. If you use the enlightenHR furlough leave agreements, you're covered because that is in there. And in the agreements that we drew up, it clearly says under what circumstances furlough leave will end, which would be furlough leave scheme, the job retention scheme ends, we need you back in the business. So yes, you can just call people back in.
Yeah, well, great, thank you. And I'll come to you with a few more questions in a moment, Alison. Tim Godfrey, Bishop Fleming, there's cash is king at the moment, and we're talking about, with Alison, about furloughing staff, which does mean we still have to keep paying them. How are you seeing it from your client's point of view?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think it's a big challenge for everybody out there at the moment. A lot of this policy, as we know, was made with the right intention of supporting businesses, but now the practical accessibility of some of that is now having to play catch up. The furlough portal is supposed to go live on Monday the 20th, but the reality is it's probably going to be swamped when it opens, and we're expecting as a firm to actually see employers still having to make the payments in the month and claim it back probably in May. I'd be interested to hear what other businesses are expecting at the moment. We're working with our clients to try and help them to access that alongside some of the other monies that are available. And that cash is king title is not necessarily about keeping it all in yourself. It's making sure you.
It's a bit like wheel tappers suddenly. We've gone into freeze frame mode.
So the whole economy keeps moving. Alison talked about employers making business decisions about burning.
Can I ask you? You mentioned that your connection was breaking down slightly. I'm hoping we're getting you back now. But can I ask you about? You mentioned other forms of funding available. Have your clients been successful in accessing the grants that are available? Oh, yeah, we've lost Tim now.
We all know that Torbay Council. Can you hear me, Steve? You there?
Well, we can hear every other word, Tim. So sorry about that. So,
It was working well when we were doing it.
It was. We've obviously, your kids have got up now and they're using the video, aren't they? So,
Well, I hope not, but there we go.
it's the joys of working from home. But what we've got on the screen there, Torbay Council have published the grants that are available. There's 10,000 where the rateable value is 15,000 or below, 25 where rateable value is 15 but less than 51. And in one of my lives, I run a sports facility, and yesterday we did receive £25,000 straight into the bank account. So that was a team bridge item. So I'm hoping that Torbay will be on point with that as well. What's your experience, Tim?
Yeah, Steve, they were brilliant at getting the portal set up early in terms of the uploading your information. They were ahead of the game there. But I think anecdotally, it seems to be taking a bit longer to get the money out. I think there are a few businesses a bit frustrated at that. So whilst not a negative comment in any way, I think they did a great job, and I suspect all councils are under a lot of pressure at the moment. It'd be really nice to see some of those small grants get out as well. I think they're going to rely on it. You know, there's a lot of people out there that've got no income at all at the moment. I think it's crucial that we get this out to them. You know, as you know, I'm also the chairman of the English Riviera Bid Company, and I think whilst we're all in lockdown, I think there's some sectors that hopefully will be allowed to go back to some kind of trading in the shorter to medium term. I think the tourist businesses are going to suffer for a number of months now, as we know that places like France and Italy have said they're unlikely to open their tourism channels for probably until the middle of July, end of July. And I believe in Italy's case, they've even said that unless there's a vaccine, they won't open the bars. So spare a thought for those tourism businesses that really do need the support of the banks and the government and the council at this point in time.
Yeah, and you mentioned the banks there, and I have to declare an interest, working for Barclays for 40 years and been a relationship lending manager for the last 25. I've never seen such a demand for assistance with such a difficult mechanism to use to deliver the money. How are you helping your clients provide the banks with the information that is required by the British Business Bank before we can rely on a government guarantee?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And that's an interesting question. I think everybody thought this was going to be an easy to access channel and that money would be made available really quickly. I think the key thing about this scheme is that actually it's all based around future viability as well. So people wanting to access the CBILS, coronavirus interruption business loan schemes are going to have their accounting information completely up to date and provide some forward-looking cash flows to show that they can actually get through this and come out the other end. It's not free money in this case, so therefore viability is essential. And we're trying to encourage our clients to, do that now, do that piece of work, because you need enough money to get you through. And as you come out and you've got to, I don't know, restock your shop, restock your bar, buy raw materials as the supply chain gets moving again. We're expecting suppliers to want payment quicker than normal. I mean, we'd all settled into a routine of paying suppliers in whatever sector it was on 30, 60, 90 days. Well, I suspect we're going to get a compression of those payment periods now. So I think it's going to be a challenge, but accessing it, talking to the banks, everybody's trying their hardest to get to the funding, but people need to realise that it is about viability and getting the right amount of money at the right time for them.
Yeah, and certainly what we noticed with the council grants, they're still expecting at least another 1,000 businesses to apply that haven't applied, and I suspect that there are a few clients that are not beating the way to your door because worried about whether they won't qualify for loan once they've got the figures. Do you find that's an issue?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the business rate grant, the one we're talking about in terms of the council, I mean, you either qualify or you don't, because if you've got small business rate relief, then you will get the £10,000. If you're in the 15 to 51,000, then you'll get the £25,000 grant as long as you qualify. I think there are challenges around businesses that have got multiple outlets with rateable values within that lower banding. And there are specific reasons why you may not qualify for small business rate relief and therefore may not qualify for the grants. And that's a real challenge. I mean, in fact, we're telling all our clients to make sure they check their rateable value online. When you go on the portal, Torbay.gov portal, check what your rateable value is, check what your classification is and make sure it's right. I think that's the first port of call. And then speak to your accountant and see if they can give you any advice around accessing that if necessary, or go direct through the link in. And we're certainly spending a lot of time, as is Alison, just talking to our clients and supporting them. You know, this is about us all getting through this together because we're all in business together at the end of the day.
And we are Torbay together. So
exactly.
Now Torbay together has had a real effect on our community, I believe. And my first time I met Simon Sherbersky was at one of the Torbay together meetings. Simon, I've got a few questions that have come through here. One is somebody saying, I'm bored after being furloughed. How can I help? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Can I just give a couple of headlines just so people sort of know what we've been doing since the 16th of March when we set up the Torbay Community Coronavirus Helpline. We've taken over 4,000 calls. We've got currently on the books about 740 volunteers, but we can always have more people who can help others in their streets, in their neighbourhoods, for those who can't go out and who are particularly vulnerable. We've referenced 530 of those volunteers. We've matched 350 of them. And we've had something in the order of about 1,400 tasks that have been completed. Most of those have been shopping and prescriptions. And in the first 2 weeks, it was quite difficult to get a prescription and to get shopping. And I just want to acknowledge, first of all, our staff at Torbay Community Development Trust, who have worked amazingly, have done hours like you wouldn't believe, have really stepped up to help the vulnerable in our community. And that's happened across our sector. So we've got people on our helpline from Healthwatch, from Age UK, from other organisations in the sector. I think the sort of key issues that are coming up in the community are a lot of people are very anxious. We've had some people who've received letters and have just rung up and just started sobbing on the phone. So we're having to support our staff and others through that process. The biggest issue that's coming up for us is around food at the moment. And I just wanted to give a bit of a plug for the newly formed Torbay Food Alliance. So all the food banks in Torbay have come together to create a new food alliance. They've seen a doubling in demand. And I just wanted to put a shout out to all of the guys in this forum. I think that they could do with some help. I guess there's people on this call who have experience of bulk buying, food, goods, and so on. And I wondered whether there might be any expertise in the business forum that might be able to help the food banks, entirely volunteer-led, you know, improve their supply networks, and maybe some of the purchasing power within the business sector might actually help them. I'm not sure I actually answered the question, Steve.
Well, I think it's a good lead in to what you actually do. But if you're bored at home, how can they then join you? Is there a quick way to sign up?
Yes, there is. And after this call, I will send around the flyer. We have a helpline number, which is live from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, 7 days a week. The number is 01803 446 022. You can dial that number and get through to one of our staff or a volunteer and log your interest. There is an online version of that, which I'll send round after the meeting. So you can log on and just register your interest online through a Google document.
Yeah, well, that's great, because what has been so heartwarming has been the sense of community, the sense of, dare I say, socialism that has actually come into our world, and we suddenly realise what is truly valued. And I have mentioned her here. I mean, we do have our own rising star. I know we've had Captain Tom nationally go absolutely berserk with a fundraising success. We've got Katie Kavanagh and with Reform, and I'm hoping, she's already said she will come on. I'm hoping we'd get her here next week for our next special edition. So, but thank you for the work you're doing, and Torbay, so the Torbay communities together. I have just been asked to remind everybody that not everybody got the invites to today for some reason. We do have 65 on the line. If people could make sure they register their personal email on the Business Forum website and join our marketing list, and check the junk mail, make sure that we haven't gone into junk, because I think there might have been some people who didn't get the email today. But thanks for Angela in the background reminding me of that one. Now, sitting, actually, just thinking about that, volunteers. Alison, how do we stand from an employment law point of view for volunteers?
Originally, people weren't allowed to do any work for other organisations as well as for their own. That's changed, but they've always been able to do volunteer work. So you can be a volunteer, but not for your own organisation. I had some clients saying, actually, somebody's volunteered to come and mow the grass at the office. Is that okay? No, it's not, because that's working for your own organisation or a linked organisation. So if you are employed by one company, which is part of a group, you can't work for them. But volunteering is absolutely fine, as is now taking a second job. So if you are on furlough from your full-time normal role and you take a second paid job delivering food for Tesco, for example, that's fine. And you get to keep your furlough leave pay plus the pay you're being paid for that job. And volunteering's great, and it's certainly a great way to get out there and help the community and feel you're really adding value if you have the time and ability to do that. But yes, absolutely fine to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Now, talk about wellness and well-being. It's a rather touchy subject, this one, but we have got Chris Linton from Wollens patiently waiting in the background there. And at any time when we all sort of review our own circumstances, probably the question we've all been putting off and might now come to the fore, sadly, is about whether we've got a will or an LPA. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about this?
Hi, yes, so I'm Chris. I'm one of the partners at Wollens. I'm based in Torquay. Well, I'm not based in Torquay at the moment, but I'm usually based in Torquay. And one of my specialisms is in wills, and I think they're very often overlooked by most. We know that a significant proportion of people nationally don't actually have wills. It's maybe somewhat of a surprise to most that people haven't. Others are surprised that people actually bother making them at all. They're absolutely paramount, and not having one is brainless in many ways. I'd recommend everybody does, purely because it makes life much easier for those who are around after us. Obviously, sadly, we're in a position at the moment where people are passing away, people are getting significantly poorly and thinking about these things more than they normally do. Sadly, time is of the essence to some extent at the moment, because we know that if you do become poorly from this, you tend to go downhill fairly quickly. And it now isn't the time to wait and do it another day. It's time to start thinking about these things now and getting them in place, because if not now, then when?
Do I need a solicitor to do one, or can I just do it myself?
You can do them yourself. They can technically take any form you like. The law in place is Section 9 of the Wills Act, which, believe it or not, was from 1837. So we're going back nearly 200 years of the law that actually governs wills. They need to be in writing. They need to be signed by you, and they need to have two witnesses. The two witness point being the main point at the moment. They also need to make it clear that they need to be a will. Now,
how can we get a signature witnessed at the moment when we're not allowed to be with each other?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Really, it's a really difficult thing to do. There's lots of people been coming up with some really interesting ways of doing it. Effectively, you've got to be able to say that you were within sight of the person signing the will and knowing that that was what they were doing. So there's no reason why you need to be within 2 meters. You don't need to be sat in a room with them, but you do need to be within eye line. So at some point you need to be able to access individuals around you. The most important thing being they need to be independent, they need to be over 18, they need to be someone who isn't a beneficiary, because you certainly don't want a beneficiary signing your will as a witness, because that will take away any benefit they're unable to take on the will. So you don't want to be doing that. A couple of interesting ones that we've seen in terms of what people have been doing, including myself getting involved in a couple of these, signing on windscreens of cars. So the person who's signing the will stands outside, puts the will on the bonnet of the car, and the 2 witnesses are sat inside the car, so that they don't actually need to come into contact with each other. Sitting in a garden at a distance, you know, with a will on a garden bench or on a table in the middle of the garden, and witnesses from either side, neighbours or something, being able to see you sign it and then witnessing, or even peering through windows. Now, looking through windows sounds quite obvious, but it's not one that's new. And in fact, when I knew I was going to be doing this talk, I thought I'd look back and see some examples of when we might have done similar, when similar issues might have arisen. And there was a particularly interesting case dating back to the 1700s, 1779, a case of Honora Jenkins. Pardon?
Jim remembers that. So.
Jim does, yes, yeah. Jim reported on it. He was there live. And anyway, this lady was an asthmatic, and she didn't want to be getting out of her carriage. She was a particularly wealthy young lady. Didn't want to be getting out of her carriage with all the smog around her and things. And she was witnessed signing her will by someone stood inside the office. So, you know, she went to a stage of taking some steps which were unusual at the time, and managed to get away with it. It's a risk. I've read various professionals who are saying any will is better than no will at the moment. At least you've got something in place, and I think you've got to agree with that. The fact is that solicitors can get one done for you within the day if necessary. There are various ways that you can do them, but it's important to take the right advice, get it done properly, and if it's done properly, it's valid, and hopefully you don't need to pay too much attention to it before.
What do you say to somebody? Sorry to interrupt. What do you say to somebody who says, "Well, I don't need a will; everything will go to my other half"?
Well, that's a common misconception to start with, and particularly in a world as we've got today, where we have lots of people having second marriages and children from previous marriages and things like that. It's particularly important. Sorry, have I just disappeared? Am I still here?
I think you're still there, yes.
I'm still here, yeah, okay. It's particularly important with second marriages and children from previous marriages and things, purely because the common misconception that everything just happens to my spouse isn't actually true. And in fact, although we can own something jointly, particularly lots of people like investing in things like ISAs and other things which are invested in sole names. Now, only the first £270,000 worth of assets will pass to an individual spouse if there are children. So, particularly, that's not a significant sum if you take into account a relatively decent estate, and indeed you can be left with a situation where the children take a significant amount of money from either their parents or, of course, away from the potential wicked stepmother that they don't want to have any money anyway. So it really is important to make sure that you've got something in place to avoid that. It's all about planning. If you plan properly, you can avoid any of these problems, as well as saving yourself quite a lot of money, because there are various things about tax that you can save, particularly with reference to the forum. Business assets, I've I've worked with various members of the panel and others to make sure that we can get wills in place for clients that take into account their business assets and really make sure that they can utilise all of the relief that are available to people owning business assets. You're not going to get that if you buy a off-the-shelf will in WHS or any other retailers that you can get your hands on at the moment, or indeed doing them completely online on your own. It's a risky business. You've got to get it right. And I have no doubt that at the end of all of this, there will be some test cases going through the courts that say, oh, this will wasn't witnessed by 2 people, but it was witnessed by one who was sat there, and the second witness was on the end of the phone or on a video call. Hey, we've got technology now, we should be using it, but the law doesn't allow us to. Yeah, Scotland does. Scotland are allowing video witnesses now. They've recently changed that purely for this coronavirus issue. And interestingly, Australia, you may have read in the press last year, so it was before all of this was going off, actually allowed a will to go through their courts that was an unsent text message. So a chap had drafted a text message, decided again, or put it in his draft. It was sadly the chap actually committed suicide, so it was very sad. But at some point he obviously decided not to send it, or to just leave it in draft so it could be found. Was obviously then found deceased, and the text message was sent to the court, and the court decided it was a valid will. That's obviously Australian law. It wouldn't have any application here, but we haven't had any test cases of similar circumstances to see if that would work. Perhaps the courts would allow that. I doubt it, but I would be really interested to see someone having a will now which was witnessed by video link. You know, in these circumstances, all of you sitting there watching me sign a will, and then 2 of you act as a witness. It's hard to say that you haven't seen me sign what is clearly a will. So it'll be remain to be.
It's interesting you should say that, because we are actually recording this webinar today, so everything you've said will be taken and used in evidence in future cases.
Yeah. Sure. I think that it's always down to big cases that end up going through the courts. So we'll need someone particularly wealthy to do it. So Tim, thanks for stepping up. and we'll find out what happens.
And if Tim's asked me to be a witness to his will, is that bad news because I'm not a beneficiary?
Could do, Steve. Could do. And it's thinking about updating your wills as well. So, you know, even though you're using me as the example, thank you, Chris.
That's right. It is sound advice. And of course, if anybody gets remarried, the old will is null and void. Is that correct? That is, yes. Yeah, that's an important point of to take into account, particularly again in the world of remarriage and things. One of the things that I did mention quickly in terms of how to make a will at the moment. Wollens have just actually introduced an online platform where you can put all of your details in. You can basically provide all of your will instructions without ever speaking to us, without ever meeting with us, taking your time. You can do it completely out of hours. You can do it sat on your sofa while you're bored out of your mind with the current television outlook. So it's a really good way of doing it. We then obviously pick it up as human beings, look at it, see if there's anything that we need to raise with you. We can then put it through the system, produce a will for you really quickly. But it's one of those that I know that nobody really likes talking to lawyers. Nobody likes listening to lawyers either. So I'll stop talking very soon. But it's a really good way of getting it done in a way that it causes less hassle for you to be able to do it in your own time, sat on your sofa. You put in the information and we do the rest for you and advise you on anything that you need to do. Yeah, well, I really appreciate your input this morning, and thank you to Wollens as well, along with Bishop Fleming and enlightenHR for being, and South Devon College for being great sponsors. That's kept the forum going. We couldn't do it without you. I did get a request to show something, because in terms of well-being and health, hopefully everybody on this call is feeling well, but have you actually told the research people that you are feeling well? There is an app, and it's called the COVID symptoms app, so COVID-19. and it comes up like this, and you can actually go in there and put in the details, how you're feeling today, and I'll go in and say, report today, even if you're well, and it will come up on the screen, and that says, have you had a test for COVID-19? I say no. My next question is, I feel physically normal. Now, some of you might actually say, I don't look normal or sound normal, but I do feel physically normal. I can press that and it goes into the research stats and it's done. So please, everybody, there's a couple of million people registered. If we could get a few more thousand on there, that would be good and help the stats. So that's the under useful information today. I've got a couple of questions coming through. Oh, there's a good one from Julie Brandon. Welcome, Julie. What is the rough cost of having a will drawn up, please? One for you, Chris.
Okay, it's a really difficult question to ask. I know that's a very solicitor answer. It really depends on your circumstances. It depends what you need to do. You're talking a starting price would be a couple of £100 generally, but they can work up to many thousands of pounds depending on what you're looking to do. Most people would fall into the lowish hundreds of pounds to make a will. And I think the important thing to remember with that is that comes with all of the protection that solicitors acting for you would generally do anyway. You can find them online for cheaper, but as I've said before, I think there's very little value in doing that, because if you get it wrong, you don't find out until it's too late, because the only way you find out is after you've died. And generally, the cost for trying to sort out a badly drafted will is significantly more than it would ever be if you just made it properly in the first place. So I would seek advice. I would make sure that you take into account that, yes, there will be a cost, but that cost will be significantly less than the downside if you got it wrong yourself.
Yeah, I've got a customer who died on the 12th of June 2018. He died intestate, and he owes the bank a lot of money, and he's worth a lot of money, but unfortunately nobody has yet been able to access any of it, and then we're nearly 2 years coming up now. So these things can get very protracted. A simple conversation and a signature.
I think it's another point about making the will is the appointment of executors. So the executors in your will are the people who who carry out the duty of your administering your estate, and in your will they get that authority is developed directly from the will itself. So they can walk straight into the bank the next day, show them a copy of the will, and they know who the executors are. They have access to all of that information immediately. Without a will, you require the court's permission for that, to effectively step up to the plate and tell the court that you're the person who should be doing this. That can take many months, or as Steve said, years to actually get it. And until we get to that stage, everything can be in lockdown. You could have, in Steve's case, thousands of pounds locked up in a bank account that nobody can access. That's not good for anybody. A simple will would have probably solved that issue very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Now, one subject that might come up, and I've heard it from some working colleagues who are complaining that they're so busy while their furloughed colleagues or people who are off sick are having maybe a different time. Alison, what would happen in those circumstances where maybe somebody is, for want of a better word, taking the mickey? Is it possible to sack somebody that's on furlough or for?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you've got your norm, all the employment law, which is in place anyway, remains in place even when somebody's on furlough. So if you have conduct issues, and I guess at the moment, one of the things that might come up might be something on social media, which is always quite a hot topic, where your employees are posting something which is inappropriate to the business. Can you still go ahead and do a disciplinary and an investigation? So yes, you can. And if you've already started a process before you put people on furlough leave, potentially, yes, you can still carry on with that. In terms of taking the Michael, that's a bit of a difficult one. I think it's more about trying to motivate the people who are still working as well as keeping in touch and making sure the people who are on furlough are okay, because that's the really important thing. And of course, it's very difficult in terms of they're not working. So a bit like you said earlier on about forum members registering a personal email address, I said to all my clients as they were putting people on furlough, make sure you've got personal email addresses, personal mobiles for people. And I know I've been sending updates out almost daily, and I had one director come back to me the other day and say, why aren't I getting these updates? And of course we realized that the HR contact she designated was on furlough because it was going to his work email and she wasn't getting them. So so keeping in touch with those people who are on furlough, and I think that helps to stop the, you know, if people are still in touch with the business, it'll make it much easier when they come back in and keep people updated and feel part of the team.
Okay, thank you. I thought I just thought about that, and also just got another question for Chris has come through. Where should a will be kept? Because we could start ransacking houses afterwards, but you know, where would be the safest place to keep it, and how do we know it's the latest?
It's an interesting point. There is a central, or there isn't a formal central register of wills. There is a company called Certainty who do an element of registration of wills, so that people know where they are. I mean, it's only as good as the paper it's written on. But again, the fact is that because you can change a will at any point and there are no formal restrictions into doing them, you could do a formal will with a solicitor one day and you could sit at home and do another one the next day. So it's very difficult to know exactly where they are. We would always recommend that you store them with your solicitor, and that your family know who your solicitor is and know who to contact, because obviously it's safe, it's protected, it's everything it can be. Failing that, a safe at home is always a better plan than anything else. It's probably not a good idea to just throw it in a drawer, or necessarily to give it to a child, because if you give it to a child and that child notices that it doesn't say what they want it to say, they may decide to tear it up. And if a will's been destroyed, then it doesn't exist anymore. So it is important to have them stored. There are potentially, with some places, charges for holding onto wills. Not to cast any aspersions, Steve, but I know that traditionally there's been charges by banks. But again, they're safe. So the point is, it may cost you, but having them stored safely is important, because they're probably the most important document you'll ever sign. You'll never find out the outcome because you'll be dead by the time it gets carried out. But at the end of the day, it's about protecting your family, protecting those who are here when you're no longer here. And if that's not the most important thing we'll ever do, I don't know what is, really.
Yes, I know we certainly used to keep in safe deposit, and there might have been a safe custody charge of a few quid a year, but I used to spend a lot of time going down to the strong room to get information out for people that were kept in safe. But it's valid. I mean, could an online will be stored somewhere? Would that be valid?
A will, so you can't actually leave it online because it would need to be signed in hard copy. So there would always be somewhere a hard copy piece of paper with your signature on, with the witness's signature on. If it's lost, it's worth nothing. It was a complete waste of time. So it's important to keep the originals. Where we prepare wills for someone, we would always offer to store them. We would almost expect to be storing them for people. They're free to take them. The wills belong to them. So some people say to us, no, I want to store them at home. That's fine. I think you've always got to think about that point of whose hands they fall into after you've died, or after you've gone into a care home, or after you're in hospital. Someone receives that who doesn't like what it sees, because doesn't like what it says, because it leaves your evil sibling more money than you, or leaves too much money to charity, or does something that you think isn't fair, and you pick it up and destroy it. It's sadly it's there as an issue, okay. And that's why I would always recommend they get stored professionally.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. And it's a bit of a morbid subject, but we've got a captive audience, and I think we should all be thinking about this now. And thank you very much to Chris at Wollens for the advice aid. I've got a few questions on the line. There's a lot of talk where landlords are still asking for full rent. So this is obviously a people person, a people question. And in our case, half the rent, this person's getting asked for half the rent. Given we have little income coming in, is anybody aware if the government are advising to help small businesses where rent is still being expected to be paid? So there's a few commercial landlords out there demanding rent from tenants who haven't got any income. Any ideas on there, whether there's any government advice or help? Tim? Oh.
Yeah, I've been asked this a couple of times by landlords and tenants, in fact, around this whole situation, and it's a challenging one. You know, landlords rely on their rent, much like the tenants rely on the income they get from that premises, operating out that premises, and I think it's a difficult balance to trade. I think that the grants for the smaller retail shops are there for a reason. They're a property-based grant, and therefore you'd expect them in some respect to meet those property costs. You've got no business rates potentially for the next 12 months. You've got a grant from the, you know, okay, it's a taxable grant, but you've got a grant from the government through the local authority. But I think more importantly, it's about striking a balance, speaking with your landlords and landlords speaking with tenants, and agreeing something that works. You know, maybe it's about moving from quarterly rent to monthly. Maybe it's a 3-month deferral of rent, and then an agreement how you catch up that rent over a period of time. I mean, I've heard in some cases of landlords giving rent-free periods. You know, there's lots of different things happening out there, but I think there has to be a realization that it works both ways, and landlords do need to maintain their income so they can maintain their obligations in relation to the property as well. So, and I think that it's important that landlords themselves don't take actions that, you know, in anger that could lead to challenge later on down the line. What you don't want is, you want the tenants to be there for the long run. So taking some actions now, maybe, and it's a legal point, but you know, changing the locks because you're not getting paid might mean that the lease gets treated as terminated and you can walk away. So I think we've got to be really careful in these times, and you've got to speak to the right people and get the right advice. And that's my take on it.
Okay, I don't think there's any. Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, and thank you, Tim, for taking that one head on. Actually, I've just been asked to give a shout out now. That I could actually turn this into a bit of a market commercial break now, but we do have asked for a shout out from a new attendee, because normally if we were having our breakfast, I'd get the new attendees to stand up and show us who you are and give us a wave and applaud them for joining us. I'll give a shout out for Chris Lander from Pulse Sports Therapy in Colleton St Mary. So welcome, Chris. That's a shout out from Pete Blackler. There's, in more lightened mood, Mr. Cole, Barry Cool, our very own Barry Cole, he's asked Jim, when are you going to be giving your next cookery lesson?
I'm looking to this Sunday, actually. I mean, that's how to make a fool of yourself in the worst possible way. I've done 2 so far. One was cheese straws and then sausage rolls, thanks to my wife, my mentor. So I've had a request from the grandkids for chocolate brownies and jam tarts. So watch this space. I might have a go on Sunday. But just let you know that the first one went down really well. I actually tweeted James Martin, you know, as a joke, and he followed back, which was brilliant. And he's got 600,000 followers. So yeah, I might be looking at a change of career, Steve, I think.
Well, and this leads me nicely to the next question. Question to Simon. With your Food Bank Alliance, are you preparing food as well? And please note, this is great work. Get Simon off mute.
Hello, sorry. Yes, we haven't really, on any large scale, got involved in the preparation of food. There are 1 or 2 other local charities that are exploring that. So the Ellicombe Cafe, for example, on Market Street, are starting to prepare home-cooked meals for those who can't. But most of our energy and time has been about food parcels from the food banks. And I just wanted to give another plug. The Food Bank Alliance, I'll send a link momentarily, but they're trying to raise a crowdfund thing and get matched from the council. It seems to have stalled around the 2K mark, but they could really do with some impetus and stimulus to get that crowdfund up so they can supply more food to those who can't get out and don't have resources themselves. And as I said, a lot of those people may well be people from your organisations, you know, who suddenly aren't in work anymore, who are struggling financially.
Yeah, thank you for that. And there's, so actually this is a health question here, but this one is about reminding people to take care of their IT kit. We talk about viruses affecting humans. We've been talking for years about viruses affecting computers, and now these laptops and computers we have are our lifeblood, and it keep us going. So that's from Andy Favell, making sure people look after their IT kit. There are some links being posted. I think what we need to do is we'll pull together a list of useful links and put them on our Torbay Business Forum website. Please do remember to go in and register on torbaybusinessforum.org.uk. Give us your personal email address as well, so that we can make sure that we've got good connectivity and broadcasting any changes. Do want to do this again next week. I'm hoping that our audience of 63 will say that it was good and want to come back next week. We've got just a couple of minutes left. On the screen you see a few shout outs. The support that the government has announced, because I've just seen another query come in about business rates and whether they can or can't. So we'll try and answer those questions offline. I'm sorry we haven't got time for everybody today, because I know we've all got to get busy in a moment. Now, one person that always will feature in our events is Susie Colley at Torquay Chamber of Commerce. Susie has mentioned that there is a producer of PPE equipment which will be available to the healthcare industry. It's a local business and it's suitably royally approved. I'm losing the words because I can't find the email. So please, if we can put details of that on behalf of Susie out to people, because there'll be plenty of businesses with care homes, customer facing staff that may need PPE but can't get it. So I'm sorry, Susie, if I haven't done that properly, but I've given you the best plug I can think of off the top of my head. So I just want to thank everybody for joining in today. We're going to do good time management as part of webinars. I'm going to thank Jim Parker. We look forward to your next cookery lesson and the next edition of Torbay Weekly. Simon, the work you're doing in the community, fantastic. Please do keep giving, keeping us up to date on how that's going. Tim, the financial questions, I dodged all the banking ones, so I let you take the heat on that. So cash is king, but it's not just a webinar. Don't forget, we are always available. Please do come and ask questions if we can. We'll answer. Alison, you're keeping the organisations that I'm involved in, not Barclays, I hasten to add, but you're keeping us in the straight and narrow. So thank you very much. And please, anybody that needs to get hold of Alison, her contact details are there. And Chris, thank you for, I know it was the morbid end of the conversation, but this is reality, isn't it? But thank you very much for your anecdotes. I want to thank Emily Tucker, ably in the background managing the webinar today. Thank you so much, Emily. Anybody that would like to sponsor the forum, we do have a wonderful new range of packages. We cannot exist without our sponsorship, and you'll see on the screen there we have 12 sponsors at the moment, and we are rejigging the packages. So there's a couple of people who've already decided to upgrade to gold. We've only got 6 of those. Thank you to South Devon College is taking up one of those, and also James from Accounting for Everything, he wants to do that. So Tim, unless you want to outbid him, but we just want to make sure that we keep on the contact. We're all stuck in our home offices and so forth, but we can still be together. I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining in today. This is Torbay Together, uniquely inspiring. Thank you and have a safe day. Bye for